Oh, look at this. Look at that. The open road ahead of me. English countryside, and in front of me a trusty little Royal Enfield Meteor 350. What more could you want? And the sun's come out. And the sun's come out. How amazing is this? Just chew into my fruitcake first. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. So today we're going to do a long-term owner's review of the Meteor 350 by Royal Enfield. I've owned this bike for 6 months now. I've ridden it 1,600 miles across all different types of roads. I'll tell you the pros, the cons, some of the pitfalls and some of the great bits about owning this Royal Enfield. So if that sounds good to you, then stick around and I'll tell you all about it. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about my ownership experience of this motorcycle, why I bought the bike in the first place, how my experience has been, the ups and the downs, the highs and the lows, and then I'm going to tell you about why I'm actually getting rid of this motorcycle. I'm moving it on to a new owner. So let me just pull out of here. It's quite a tricky one. So yeah, this bike, I bought it because I fell in love with the looks of the motorcycle. Royal Enfield is a brand that I've got a lot of affinity for, so I like their back to basics, affordable, accessible motorcycling style. So with Royal Enfield, you need £4,000, £5,000, £6,000, you can get a brand new bike. They're well made, the quality is there. I'm not sure if it was always there in the past, but it's definitely there now. And if you think, when these bikes were released, they were priced at about 3.6k, so 3,600 of the Queen's English pounds. This particular variant, the Supernova, was, when I bought it, £3,909, and I've got the original bill of sale, which will verify that. So for under £4,000 you get an amazing package. Up the front you've got cast wheels with Seat tyres, which are an Indian brand, which I subsequently learnt are a sub-brand of Pirelli, so they're quite an established brand in their own right. Non-adjustable forks up front, but they're perfectly capable. I'll go over some bumps now, just of absorbing the sort of shocks and strains. Oh, that was a bit much of a test. Didn't expect it to be quite that bumpy. So much for demoing the suspension. Yeah, so as well as the excellent little engine we've got sitting underneath us, you've got the sort of quality but not premium suspension components. And then you've got a very retro sort of styling package. Definitely a cruiser, a retro cruiser. This particular variant's got chrome. Don't get a puncture, don't get a puncture. This particular variant's got plenty of... What is that? There's a wood stuck up there. Got plenty of chrome on it. And then we've got these very retro colours. I mean, I've talked all about the colours before, so I won't go into that in full detail in this video. But you can get a range of different colours for the bike, all with the different pros and cons and different looks to it. So yeah, that's the bike really. Single, retro, Royal Enfield. You know, you don't really need to know any more than that. Well, let's talk about the ownership experience. Okay, so ordering the bike, I ordered it before I'd even seen the motorcycle, so it was very much an impulse buy. I just knew that the Meteor was a brand new bike. It had this brand new engine, single. I wanted to change up my motorcycling. I didn't want to be herring around on a sports bike anymore. I wanted to go a bit slower, a nicer pace of life, and just to enjoy the experience of motorcycling. Royal Enfield really provides that. Obviously there's a lot of bikes that aren't particularly quick, but with the combination of the quality and the ability to get this whole package for not very much money, then it seemed like a bit of a no-brainer really. And it turns out I was one of many. You know, it was a very popular motorcycle, certainly last year, and I expect it's still going to sell well going into 2022, especially as the summer comes. So I've taken the Meteor now 1,600 miles, I think, all over bits of Wales, right around my local area, taking it on the motorway or the highway if you're American. And I've got a feeling of what the bike can do, what it's like, and what it should be used for. So obviously all bikes have a sort of niche to them, and the Meteor's definitely got its niche. And I've also accessorized the bike with a few nice trinkets directly from Royal Enfield. So if you're interested in that, there is another video which just outlines the accessories, the top 5 accessories I think are suited to this machine. But yeah, so the bike itself has given me nothing but fun, enjoyment, relaxation, really just kind of an overall pleasing, kind of rewarding experience. And I can't really quite put it into words exactly. If you consider what you get for the money, it's really, really exceptional. And obviously we don't want to talk about specs all the time, but you've got the LED headlights, you've got the Tripper Navigator, the dash is quite retro but also modern. It's just a really really nice package overall. So yeah, I got the bike and I used it for riding around town, running errands. Obviously I was quite protective over it when it was brand new, so I didn't leave it anywhere I shouldn't. But it's very, very good at that. So bimbling around or riding around on short rides, it's excellent at. Definitely recommend it for that. Around town it's excellent. And this kind of riding as well, this kind of country. We're going into a 30 now, so I guess we're going to transition into an urban environment, but sort of bimbling through rolling hills and countryside, the bike's really suited for. So the engine's outputting 20 brake horsepower thereabouts, just indicate here, and it's got plenty of torque for this kind of use experience. Nice man, let me out. Where the bike falls down a little bit is longer rides, and I'll tell you why. A few reasons. One, wind protection isn't that good. If you have the windshield that's fitted to the Supernova at factory, but it's also available as an option to the other variants of the Meteor, it buffets a lot of wind straight over the windshield into your visor. So that's a little bit of a pain. If you're not using a windshield at all, so I call this running in fireball mode, then you get a lot of wind hitting your upper body, which is a little bit also of a pain. The other thing about long distances is you want to be covering greater distance, therefore going at higher speed helps that endeavour. And the Meteor, I would say it's comfortable at 60 miles an hour. There will be people who say, no, I cruise at 70, but really you kind of, you flat out at 70 miles an hour. If you're in fifth, that's a throttle wide open. And so I'm 5'11", but I've got quite broad shoulders, so maybe I'm catching more wind. I'm about 80 kilos, 82 kilos. So all of that resistance maybe is slowing the bike down. Maybe if you're smaller or lighter, then the bike's going to perform better for you. But for me, you change up, it actually gets a lot of resistance at those speeds. Even bending down right over, the fastest I could go is 75 miles an hour. And people will argue, well, okay, this isn't what the Meteor's for, and I agree 100% with that. However, if you do want to do long distance, then it's going to be a pain when you want to cover a bit more ground. And the third reason long distance is a bit of an issue is because you may want to take things with you on your journey, and the storage options for the Meteor are quite poor. So if you want to consider luggage, well, there's nowhere to put anything on the bike, so you can't tuck anything under the seat or you know, a space for a phone or a sandwich or something. If you want to put luggage onto the bike, then Royal Enfield genuine accessories, they only offer the pannier box as it is on the right hand side of the vehicle, and it's not particularly nice. It's plasticky and cheap, and you'll have mismatched keys and that kind of thing. It's not great. Aftermarket options for panniers have come into existence in the months that have gone by since I've owned the bike, but still not something that I think there's a great deal of option with that respect. You're really making it do something it's not really designed to do. So although people will say touring blah blah blah, I'm telling you now, touring is not really what this motorcycle's for. It's for bimbling about 40, 50, 60 at the max miles an hour through the countryside and just enjoying being on the bike and experiencing the sights, sounds and smells and sensations of riding a new but classically styled motorcycle. I do find also on long distance rides that after a couple of hours my lower back begins to hurt, so maybe there's not that much lower back support. Knees are obviously fine because they're not crunched up like they would be on a sports bike, but if you're on this bike for a long period of time, then I find it is a little bit achy on the lower back. With respect to that, let me just quickly mention the touring seat. So the touring seat is an optional extra for the motorcycle. However, let me just pull out of here. There we go. However, it's actually harder and more firm than the standard seat. So I recently switched back from the touring seat to the standard seat. So what we're running now is the standard brown seat that comes with the Supernova. And this one is cushioned and soft, but with no shape and no detail. And the touring seat is hard. It's that combined with the suspension, which is a little bit stiff, then I find it's quite uncomfortable. So the bike really is for shorter rides, in my opinion. Everything else about the bike, so let's talk a little bit about performance. I've talked about top speed. Top speed isn't everything, especially in this day and age. Let's drop into third and see. I'll just let you see the speedo. There you go, up to 50 miles an hour. So it'll accelerate quite nicely up to 50, 60. If you want to pull out on overtakes, and I've shown this in my other videos, you've got to time the overtake correctly, you've got to plan the overtake correctly, so there's got to be space for you to come out, pull alongside. You may need to drop a gear, especially if you're sort of 50 miles an hour-ish, and then you've got to have space to tuck in again before oncoming traffic. It's not like a sports bike where you can just drop a gear and disappear, forget about anything, you know, you're definitely going past. You're not. If you're up against a car that's travelling with a reasonable turn of speed, it's going to be more difficult for you to get that acceleration. So for example, if I'm in fifth, I've got, and that's wide open throttle, you see I'm at 40, now it's 45, 50, 51, 52, 53, 55, 56, and I'm doing, coming up to another vehicle, so I'll slow down, but it's not rapid. And so whilst this bike appeals to people who've sort of come, you know, from a bigger bike background, you know, maybe a faster motorcycle they've come off, or maybe they've come back to motorcycling after a hiatus, maybe on an A2 license, whatever it is, this bike really is not, it is for the faint-hearted, shall we say. Oh, there's a lorry coming, so I'll have to slow down. Okay, now watch this overtake. Yeah, that was in 5, and I'm done. So it is possible, not too shabby. Let's just say one more time, the brakes, the suspension, the chassis are more than enough for the power output of this bike. So as I come around this bend here, I can just have great fun. The throttle can be wide open because you haven't got that much power. In fact, you have to drop down, but you have a great experience. It's a very safe bike to ride in that regards. So we're now at 1600 miles. And yeah, that's my experience of riding it. 1600 miles, and this is the kind of road really that it excels on. So we're at 50-55 miles an hour. Everything else about the bike, so performance is fine, braking is fine, handling is fine. The looks are probably the highlight of the bike. It looks stunning. Everything is quite well made. Now the question everybody asks about these bikes made in India, made in China, is how well will it last? How does it fare over time? And I'll talk a little bit about that. So service intervals are actually quite short, which might put you off a little bit. The first service comes in at 300 miles, not 500, 300 miles. You've got to get it to the dealer, and the servicing has to be done. There's a lot of debate about this, but if you want to play it safe to keep your warranty intact, the servicing has to be done at a Royal Enfield authorised dealer, or they say a garage that uses genuine Royal Enfield parts. But it's a difficult one, because if you read the manual, it says a Royal Enfield dealer, so you can't just service it yourself or get your mate to service it if he isn't that registered, and keep the warranty intact. So that's a bit of a pain. First service will cost you about £150, may cost you £200 depending where you live, may cost you £90 if you're very lucky. But it is meant to include a valve clearances check at the first service, so that's where the money goes. It takes time, the bike has to be cool. Apparently it takes a longer time to do that part of the service, not just an oil change. After that you've got to service at 3,000 miles, and then you've got to service at 6 and 9, and so every 3,000 miles you bring in the bike in, which is actually quite a short service interval, which, you know, some people are a little bit bugged by. Personally, you will be just bimbling this bike around town if you're using it, you know, for slow speed, getting about, you know, going out to the pub on a summer's evening, and just you know, enjoying the bike really. Then it won't come around that quick. If you cover a lot of miles, you go in long distances, riding out into Wales or riding to Scotland, yeah, then you're going to rack up the miles and you're going to be servicing it all the time. So you've got to consider the type of riding that comes with this type of service schedule, and obviously you won't be covering that many miles. With the other thing about the servicing is, it's this is going to be a pain. Can't see a thing. Try and get around this guy now. Now this is an example to show the bike's handling, and then we'll go back to talk about servicing. I'm just going to adjust. Look at this. This is really good fun, to be fair. Carry your speed, use all of those 21 horsepower, and you can have great fun on it. Anyway, back to servicing, back to a more serious topic. So every other service is check, lubricate, adjust. So it's not really a full service of an oil change. I don't know how much those services are, but I would imagine they're less if it involves less time to do the procedure. One other thing to mention, if you consider buying this bike, the running in schedule is particularly harsh and annoying, shall we say. If you're under 300 miles on the bike, then your maximum speed in its entirety, the fastest you can ride the bike, is 45 miles an hour, which makes it quite difficult to go on A roads and national speed limit roads, and that's in fifth. Each gear has a maximum speed, and they're graduated down as you go down through the gears. When you've got the bike above 300 miles but not yet at 1200 miles, and I'll put the kilometre versions of the two limits in as well on the screen, you can only go 40, just under 50 miles an hour, 49 point something miles an hour, so you're riding it for 1200 miles at quite slow speed, which is a bit of a pain when running in. It's particularly protective running in schedule. Now people will argue back and forth, you know, whether you need to run a bike in. I've always stuck to it, the manufacturer guidelines, but you know, maybe I'm being a little bit overcautious there. So how far will this bike go on a tank of fuel? Well, this little thing holds I think 13.7 or 13.9 litres. It'll go, I think, about, people say 300 miles per tank. I've never tried it out fully because the fuel gauge has a very weird quirk. So when you get to about a third left, it'll start flashing, lights are coming on, blah blah blah, the bar starts coming in and on and off, and you think, whoa, okay, I must be almost run out, and you're not. That'll all come on, it'll set a new trip meter, which says F next to it, I imagine standing for fuel, and then you'll be waiting ages, and then the fuel will go back to normal, showing at 2 bars as it is now, and then you'll ride for another 50 miles and then it'll come on again. It's very strange. I wish they just stuck to a normal thing where when the yellow light comes on, then that's it, you need to go and fill up, you've got 20-30 miles left in the tank. But no, they've done this kind of clever, inverted commas, clever system, which is kind of crap. It's a little bit annoying. Talking of lights as well on the dash, one of the other things about this vehicle is it's designed in India, and they obviously tested it in India because cold weather will trip your engine management light. And what happens here is that you will turn the ignition on. I think it's the fuel pressure sensor or something like that. I'll put it in the screen below if I can be bothered to find out, essentially. But it's one of the sensors. And then you'll turn the ignition on, it'll detect something out of place, not within spec, and it will flag an engine management light. Now that won't go off by turning the ignition on and off, and it doesn't affect the performance of the bike, so you still get full power. It's not kind of limited the acceleration or anything, but it's just a pain, and you've got to take it to the dealer to get it reset. Or you can buy a service reset tool, or you can, apparently there's a procedure to reset it yourself, maybe disconnect the battery or whatever. But whatever it is, it's kind of a pain. So Royal Enfield have said they're going to update the software so that basically it realises that the readings coming in to the ECU are actually within spec. Okay, let's talk about another thing, which is the Tripper Navigator. So the Tripper is this little gadget you can see here. On the right hand side, so you got I mean, talk about this before in my reviews, go and watch that if you want, but I'll talk just about the Tripper today. Tripper connects to your smartphone. You have to have a modern smartphone, so you can't use an old one because it needs a modern version of Android. And why does it need Android? Because it connects via an app to this device with Bluetooth. So modern phone, modern Android, modern app from Royal Enfield, and then what you'll see is Google Maps directions, which are actually really good, aren't they? I mean, say what you will about Google, privacy and all that, but they do a good mapping service. And then it'll show these very simple directional arrows, and it'll count down the distance before you've got to make the turn. So Tripper is quite good. However, like I say, oh, what's this? Oh, badger! Gosh, that was in the wrong place on that bridge then. Yeah, so the Tripper can be a little bit of a use. However, it's no fully fledged sat nav. People say that it drains your phone ridiculously quickly when you're using it, which is a little bit of a pain. And yeah, and it sometimes doesn't turn on. You have to activate the app. There's like a sequence. It's not just easy that you turn the bike on, the phone on, and it just connects. There's a sequence. You've got to turn one on before the other to get it to recognise, etc., etc. So it is a little bit problematic, but nevertheless, kudos to Royal Enfield for bringing a built-in standard issue, so it's not an optional extra, standard issue Tripper Navigator or navigation to a bike that when it was launched cost about £3,500 or thereabouts. Oh, that was confusing to see who had right away there, but I was quicker. Yeah, so the riding experience here is great. We talked about fuel, we talked about suspension, we talked about some of the tech. Yeah, I think I was mentioning earlier about the sort of longevity of the bike. I've had a look underneath on you guys' behalf, and I've ridden this bike in a variety of weathers. I've tried to keep it off the road when they've been salted, because obviously that corrodes everything real quick. And I've had a look underneath, and there is a little bit of rust. So you think the bike's 6 months old, 1,600 miles on the clock, pretty new. The rust is coming from the exhaust and also the catalytic converter. And for those of you who don't know, it's a straight pipe out of the engine block, and then it comes down on a horizontal angle, sort of along the baseline of the bike. Looks really good. A heat shield covers that bit because the exhaust actually goes into a cat and then round and then comes back out and then obviously exits from the tailpipe. So there's a hidden cat. Now that cat, I'll show you some pictures of this, on some people's bikes actually rusts quite badly, and they're not that old bikes, are they? So you know, you've seen owners repaint, take the cat off and repaint it and redo it. So yeah, that's a little bit of an annoyance if you've got to take the cat off and redo it all. The end of the exhaust pipe also could rust a little bit. Yeah, so the tip, you can buy brand new exhaust from Royal Enfield. I think they're about 100 to 120 quid. To get different styles, you can have a black one, a chrome one, straight cuts. There's a variety of different things you can have. Oh, this is just pure enjoyment now though, riding this motorcycle. Oh, it's just, I've talked about some of the downsides, some of the sort of nitpicking points about the bike, but it's so good at just bimbling around the English countryside. Think rolling hills, I think, you know, little B roads like this, nice views, small little hamlets and towns, villages, and then think Royal Enfield Meteor 350, and it's almost a match made in heaven. And if you think it's enjoyable now, in the sort of end of winter, imagine this when spring really starts in the summer, and you can just trundle around on a bike like this, going out to the pub, going to pick up things from the shops, whatever you want to use it for. It's just going to perform great, and it's not going to cost you much money. So the final question, I guess, then is, will I recommend this bike? And yes is the answer. I absolutely would recommend this bike. It's going to cost you now about 4,200, maybe around that, depending on which one you go for, if you get any optional extras. I've done a video on the optional extras, so you can go and check that out. But when you compare what you get with Royal Enfield for the price point, it just blows its competitors out of the water. In fact, the biggest competitor for this motorbike is actually from Royal Enfield itself, with the Classic 350. A slightly more retro looking bike, which is based on the same engine and drivetrain and probably suspension as this one. So if you like retro classic looks as opposed to cruiser, then you should go and check that bike out. Oh, this bike. Gonna miss you, little Royal Enfield. Right guys, well I think I'm going to end the video there. Thanks a lot for joining me. I hope that was interesting from an owner's perspective for the Meteor 350. I really enjoyed the ride, and I like sharing this knowledge with you guys. Hopefully it's useful. What I will say is, if you did enjoy the content today, please do drop a like. It costs you nothing, and it really helps us content creators out. It's quite a lot of time goes into filming and also editing. Don't forget the editing these videos. So if you could just smash the like button, it'd be super appreciated. If you do, then I'm going to reward you with a little bit of a beep beep on the horn. So thanks a lot. Also guys, if you've got anything you want to ask me about the ownership of the Meteor, people always ask my height, so I'm 5'11", 31, 32 inch inside leg. Get that one out of the way, but if there's anything else, then please do drop a comment down below. And finally, let's just drop, talking of dropping, we'll drop a gear to get up here. If you do like what we put out on the channel, please do consider subscribing and hit the bell notification icon, so when I put up new videos, which is about every week as it is now, then you'll get notified of them. We've got exciting stuff going on the channel. We've got some adventures, well, adventure being the key word actually. Adventures coming up, and hopefully it'll be a new chapter for Bikes and Bits. So if that sounds good to you, then stick around for the new content as it comes out, and I'll see you in the next one.